Right, panel discussion on 5G and IoT. Welcome to the stage my boss and our editor-in-chief at RCR Wireless News, Dan Meyer.
All right, thanks everybody. And a hand for Sean Kinney, by the way. He's done a great job this morning, Sean. Well done, as always. Staying awake, we appreciate that. So thanks everyone again for showing up for the event here. We'll let our panel members come up on stage. We have a large panel, as you can see, and we have 30 minutes. So there'll be speed round questions only. No, I'm just kidding. We have a very distinguished panel up here. Like Sean mentioned, I'm Dan Meyer, editor-in-chief at RCR. I've been covering the space for about 17 years now. I think I'm considered the grumpy old guy at the company, so I might throw around the CDPD term a lot just because I just want to take it back to the old school. But we have a good panel up here, and we're going to discuss kind of 5G and IoT. Obviously, for me, 5G could be a day-long discussion, so I won't go too deep into that. We have a couple sessions tomorrow afternoon that'll focus more on 5G. So we're going to kind of keep the 5G technology aspect, the standards aspect, kind of out of this discussion only because that's a whole other conversation there. But if you want some more information on that, when it comes to narrowband IoT or various 5G standards, I recommend you come tomorrow to the afternoon sessions. We'll get more in depth on that. So today we're kind of keep it somewhat higher level in terms of the impact of 5G on IoT, and by 5G, kind of what everybody assumes to be 5G. So we might be some different perceptions there, what it's going to be, but we'll keep it, as a common, what we all think it'll be. So with that long, rambling introduction, I will let my panel members quickly introduce themselves first, and then we'll jump into the topics there. So we'll start here. Neville, you want to go first there?
Neville Meijers. I'm a vice president at Qualcomm. I am responsible for driving cellular-based technology into unlicensed spectrum, working on LAA, multi-fire, 3.5 shared spectrum, and in addition to that, 5G NRSS. Also working on industrial IoT and private networks, which we'll talk about later in the day.
Very good. Peter?
Hi, I'm Pete Nagy, and I'm the president of Acommence Advisors. I'm also the tri-chair for the IoT Forum for Tech Titans, which is the Technology Association of North Texas. Acommence Advisors is a consultancy that helps businesses go to market and accelerate in mobile IoT communications and technology in general.
I'm Caroline Chen. I'm actually with Intel. It's missing there. I'm a vice president of a data center group and manage the 5G infrastructure business for Intel.
Good morning. I'm Nadine Manjaro. I am a lead consultant with InterDigital. I'm also president of my own company, Beyond Machine-to-Machine Communications, and I've been working in IoT for many years.
I'm Jake MacLeod, formerly CTO of Bechtel, and I retired from Bechtel and formed a company called GreyBeards Consulting. So I sit on several boards, both pro bono and compensated in the fiber and wireless industry, and provide strategic advice.
Great. Well, again, like I said, we have a pretty good panel here, a good cast of characters, so I think we should have some good insight here in our limited amount of time, so we'll try to keep it on time. I know we have lunch coming up. I think Sean mentioned that we are going to feed you guys here at some point, too, so try not to eat any pencils yet. We'll get to that. But I guess in terms of the topic for 5G, I think, when we talk about IoT, I think, there are so many different connection methods involved in the conversation. There's obviously wireline could be a part of it. Wireless would be a big part of it. New technologies we don't even know about yet will be a big part of it. LTE is currently part of it, 2G, 3G, everything's part of the whole ecosystem. But I think for us, we want to kind of look at the 5G aspect of it. And I guess, maybe start with, I don't know if Neville, maybe start with you on this one. I guess, how do you view 5G fitting into the IoT ecosystem? And I guess, what aspects of what we expect 5G to be will be important to the ecosystem itself, to the development of IoT? What's your general view of how it fits into the whole ecosystem there?
Well, we see 5G IoT as being an evolution to LTE, building on eMTC and narrowband IoT. Certainly, we see narrowband massive IoT being a critical part of 5G. So the ability to support ultra-dense deployments, as well as go deeper with those deployments through multi-hop technology. So that is going to be, one of the foundations of 5G IoT. In addition to that, on the wideband side, we see ultra-low latency and ultra-reliability as being two critical aspects that 5G brings, which will fundamentally change the way we see wireless technologies being leveraged in industrial IoT environments. You can imagine that the Ethernet, industrial standards like EtherCAT, Profinet, et cetera, could be built on top of a foundation that has ultra low latency and reliability. And that's where we believe that 5G is really going to change the way we view this technology.
Peter, any insight there?
Yeah, so 5G is, from a business model perspective, is going to change the way that businesses work, right? It's going to change the way that consumers operate consumer technologies. It's going to change every part of our lives. Think of the value proposition of having, instant connection wherever you are. And moreover, I really see a huge value proposition coming in the V2V space with vehicle-to-vehicle communications and autonomous vehicles, where real-time processing is critical. So I think you're going to see a lot of things changing there, and I think the value proposition is going to be very spectacular.
Okay.
So I agree with what Neville and P just said. In addition, I think 5G from the network infrastructure side bring a unique perspective to IoT, unlike before. In the previous generation, a lot of the networks really focusing on the air interface side. It's one size fits all for the consumers like us who subscribe to AT&T or Verizon. But for the 5G, because of the fact that it's really end-to-end, it starts bringing the cloud to the picture, and the unique capability of doing something called network slicing. You'll now be able to partition and deliver a slice of the network, almost like a concept of service chaining, but taking into account the air interface aspect, like what Neville was talking about. You're able to deliver just the right SLA, the right network parameter to serve the IoT needs, whether it's a low latency or massively connected, and without consuming too much of the network resources. So it makes the value proposition that's viable and feasible for the operator, for the over-the-top, and for the enterprise. The cloud aspects, here at Intel, we have the enterprise cloud, hybrid cloud, and public cloud. We recognize the CIOs and IT division who will have some say in IoT deployment and much more comfortable if the thing delivered to them feels and looks like a server. So within our division in Intel, we're really looking at serving the IoT network aspect using the same server platform that traditionally the cloud guys use. So bring the best known practice from the cloud all the way down to the enterprise, which we think it will be a winning proposition.
Okay. Nadine?
I agree with the previous speaker, and especially what Carolyn is saying, in terms of 5G, being able to develop that specific customized service, especially in terms of the QoS and the latency requirements. So you have with IoT many different devices, you have smart cities, you have first responders looking at this technology to optimize the way they do their jobs. So being able to get up real-time situational awareness, I think is big key, and that's going to be reliant on QoS as well as the low latency network that 5G will enable, as well as improvements in the backhaul technology. You'll be able to integrate millimeter wave technology, so you'll be able to utilize different spectrum and increase the backhaul, even though it's point-to-point on the last mile or the front mile, but it'll enable real-time improvements and increased capacities to deliver that individual services that's required by the devices.
Yeah.
Okay, I think it's vitally important to understand that 5G, the concept of 5G is more than a generational change now. This is a step function change that's going to last a lot longer than the normal 12-year generational cycle. It's going to provide a platform. Right now, we're building the foundation for 5G with network function virtualization, SDN and NFV and SON. And once those once we understand those technologies and the carriers learn how to ride that horse without getting bucked off, then we'll be able to put on top of that the new waveform that's going to be specified in October 2020. So with that platform that we're building now, this is a step function change that will allow new businesses, new opportunities. I just got back from Barcelona and was amazed at some of the new things that are coming out. Example, there's an app for your phone now that you can spit on your phone and it'll tell you if you're ovulating. And I tried it out and I discovered that I was 3 months pregnant. But anyway, so 5G is a step function change.
I don't know, is the bar open already? I don't know what's happening. Anyway, but well, you all kind of bring up the interesting aspect of, 5G, obviously low latency, and how that kind of plays into obviously the ability to handle lots of different connections at high speeds. And it seems like, I think we all see and hear, about the vehicle-to-vehicle, autonomous vehicles as being a main case for that, a use case for that. But it also seems like, we're so far along from where 5G is supposed to be. All the standards aren't worked out yet. But it does seem like that the autonomous vehicle space is moving full speed ahead. I said that. And so I guess, what about the timing aspect of all of this? Are we going to be concerned that some of these use cases that we're talking about, are they getting out there ahead of schedule? Should they wait perhaps until 5G is a little more standardized, or we know what 5G is going to be? I know we have an idea what 5G will be, but things change in 5 years. There could be, some new device that comes out that changes the whole world again, and next thing you know, 5G is it's a WiMAX or something like that, where it just changes something like that. I guess, should we be concerned at this point that 5G and the use cases are still in sync or not? I don't know, maybe Jake, we'll start back down that end. Is that at all a concern, do you think, in terms of making sure we're all in sync on this?
Yeah, I don't think there should be any hesitation to develop applications for this.
Okay.
Especially that ovulation application. I was quite impressed with that. But one thing coming from Bechtel, Riley Bechtel's, one of his mantras was that if you can't measure it, you cannot improve it. And so we've talked a lot about sensors here recently. And so sensor technology and the data that's going to come out of that is going to enable us to run businesses better, run cities and states better, run the federal government better, run our lives better. Because if you can't measure it, you cannot improve it. And the environmental aspects, I was interfacing with some of the scientists at Los Alamos Labs, and we just experienced a very significant methane release that was all natural, that was totally unexpected. Methane being a greenhouse gas. So the more we know about our environment and our lives and our operations, the better we can manage it. So yeah, don't wait to develop apps.
Got it. I don't know, anybody else have any maybe opinion on?
Yeah, I don't think that in reality anyone is waiting. I think they're moving forward with the application because the needs are there. Currently, you have a lot of the data being collected, but it's not really being analyzed and it's not being used to its full potential. So I think over time, as we get closer to that, that's when you're going to see the real benefits. And I think many companies are looking at that. As I mentioned before, the cities are looking at that, every aspect of it. In terms of first responders, they're looking at it and considering how it will impact their ability to save lives and to improve how they do their current operations today. So they're considering, the advancements in the technology. How do I integrate, for example, infrared sensors to tell me if someone is in a building? How do I integrate environmental sensors to tell me the conditions in real time as I go through a burning building? That's real-time use case. And so I think many organizations are looking at it today, and so it'll be up to the technology to kind of keep up with it. I think in the past, the standardization process takes quite a while. But then in reality, companies and people are moving ahead.
So I'm glad you asked that question, Dan. So there is a concept called mobile edge compute. Now it's called multiple access compute, or MEC. We've been working on that for the last quite a few 5 years. In fact, funny you brought up autonomous driving. A year and a half ago, there was a demonstration on A9 with Deutsche Telekom, Continental, and Nokia, Intel. We demonstrated that even with LTE, you're able to do road hazard avoidance by moving the intelligence all to the network, you decrease response time. So instead of going all the way to the cloud, you were able to make some intelligent decision right on the edge of the network. In this case, happened to be an eNode B. So we, I think Neville mentioned, there's an MPIoT, there's a Cat M1. We've been working on that, and the idea of having MEC is that there's an API being defined, a RESTful API, which a lot of the enterprise are very familiar with. You can do this regardless what the underlying air interface is. It's right on top of the standard. So you can start trialing now, and I agree, if you don't do it, you don't learn. And then when the 5G comes, it will just be improvement in terms of latency and capacity and different spectrums. But you should do it now, and you must do it now. Otherwise, it'll be too late. Just like all the OEMs, car OEMs say they will have this in 2020. I just saw GM said that. So how can we wait till that time before you have 5G? And plus, 5G is not going to be raw in a woof, right? There will be places where you have 3G and 4G and 5G. So the technology for IoT must be implemented such that it can tolerate any kind of air interface that you happen to be residing in.
Okay, coming out, Peter.
So with regard to 5G, in the business realm, right, 5G, many people see it as a last mile replacement strategy, right? You know, case in point, if we look at what Verizon did locally throughout the United States, except for the Northeast, they divested their fiber assets. And, you know, one could suppose they did that in advance of their 5G deployment, where they'll go back into last mile services. You know, the value proposition, you know, when you look at transportation, and I like transportation a lot for 5G, let it be known, there are a lot of great research efforts going on. You know, here in the state of Texas, both Texas A&M and University of Texas Austin have transportation institutes. UT Austin actually has built an autonomous car, which obviously does not work on 5G right now. If you open the trunk to actually to run an autonomous vehicle, it takes about half the trunk space for the compute power. The value proposition of 5G with the latency impact is going to be that you can actually have the compute power in the data center powered by Intel, okay, using Qualcomm chips. Okay, and InterDigital services. So, you know, to go forward and propagate that value proposition, right? So, I mean, you're going to need those type of compute powers to do that, because the decision-making processes on changing lanes and not hitting other vehicles on I-35 or I-40 or 75 or any of the roads that we have throughout the United States, and the efficacy that's going to be associated to that is going to be so instantaneous and so important that you're going to need that type of processing capability. Conversely, in smart cities and smart applications, you know, the 5G, you know, value chain is going to be dramatic. So when we get to when it's going to come, USDOT has pretty much put it out there that their autonomous vehicle expectations are going to be hitting around 2023. Okay, and that's when we're going to see the shift where great amounts of autonomous vehicles will be on the road, and that should be well within the 5G deployments. But you know, we need to start building the applications now, and I think that once it's out there, you know, the use cases will be dynamic and, you know, readily available.
Got it. I mean, I know with Qualcomm, I know you guys have been pretty aggressive in kind of getting people, at least going down this avenue as well. It sounds like you guys are a big part of that as well.
Absolutely. I mean, you know, the market's not going to wait for the technology. And I agree that 3G, 4G, 5G is going to coexist alongside one another for a long time. If you look at what's happening with autonomous vehicles and V2X is not waiting for 5G. It's going to move ahead pretty rapidly and will be part of that ecosystem where a lot of processing is done at the edge in order to ensure safety. But I think if we look at 5G and IoT, and we look at IoT in particular, industrial IoT, I remember when 3G was first introduced into the market and operators threw up their hands and said, what do we need all this data for? And now look at us today. We can't build networks that are big enough, fast enough for the amount of data that's consumed. And so I think with 5G, you're going to see use cases both for automotive as well as for industrial IoT that are going to change business models, that are going to move people from selling assets to selling services that were in the past not available because we didn't have access to the amount of data that we need, especially on the uplink side. If we think about data today, we think about consuming data, but what about all of those huge machines out there that actually generate terabytes of data that need to be uploaded into the network? That's where the real transformation is going to be seen in these 5G IoT networks and business models.
Interesting. Okay. Jake,
Just
yep.
to piggyback on what Nadine has said and Neville, there's a tremendous amount of information called dark data. It's information that's provided both video, voice, and sensor information that we just don't have the capability to sort through. And so we're in the middle of, dark analysis, dark data analysis, trying to figure out how we can utilize and make that useful information rather than just sitting there. It is useful, and with the advent of quantum computing, we're nowhere near there yet, but in the beginning stages, it looks like we're going to be able to analyze the dark data and utilize it in the 5G networks as well, especially for things like connected cars.
Yeah, interesting, okay. And I guess it's important too for enterprises, and again, this is an enterprise IoT show, should enterprises and even, cities be at all concerned about going down this 5G path today? I mean, I know you guys are making it sound like they should not worry about it, but, a lot of these cities, might be a little averse to, not throwing money away, but they're going to have to, be cognizant of how much they're spending on certain technologies. Obviously, enterprises are always very aware of, what they need to spend, and, as they move from 3G to 4G, there's a big cost difference for them, and 4G to 5G. So, it sounds like then that even enterprises, cities should all be on board with moving down this path of hey, 5G's coming, you need to start working with it today. Would that be a fair assessment to say they should be working on that, maybe, Neville?
Yeah, definitely. I think if you look at what LTE can do today for smart cities with EMTC and narrowband IoT, it really opens up a huge number of different use cases. If you think about what we can do with LTE, with unlicensed spectrum, with multi-fire, with 3.5 shared spectrum here in the US, and in the future with 5G NRSS, which is the shared spectrum radio, which will run either with licensed spectrum or on a standalone basis. There's a huge amount that can be done today in order to start enabling these networks. Private networks, for example, everybody's used to having a private Wi-Fi network. Well, the future is going to be a private industrial IoT network built on LTE and in the future 5G, where you can actually control exactly what happens with the environment, starting with collecting data, but then ultimately managing machines and machine-to-machine type critical communication. And so you've got to start that process today, otherwise we're never going to get there. And as I say, industry is not going to wait for us, and so we have to build these applications for those purposes starting now.
Makes sense.
So building on your city adoption, comment, right? So different cities have different levels of adoption. So I reside in the Dallas Metroplex. I saw Jennifer Sanders here a moment ago. She's with the Dallas Innovation Alliance, and Dallas has a very robust, smart city initiative going on. Austin is well noted for their smart city initiatives. Houston has theirs. The point is, the big cities will always lead the way. What 5G is going to be very interesting, though, is as we deploy the 5G radio sets, the small cities will be brought into 5G very quickly, especially down, our transportation corridors, right? You'll have to go forward and put the microcells up, down the highway, so as, Waco, or Waxahachie or Gun Barrel City have a highway. These are Texas towns. They will have 5G enablement, and they'll have to go forward and figure out how they're going to adopt. My fear with 5G, the deployers of 5G are going to deploy, where they can get the most economic benefit more quickly. right? So, urban adoption is going to be robust and quick. Suburban adoption will follow shortly, and it's rural adoption that I think that we need to look at. But I think rural America has probably the greatest to gain for it, and especially in the manufacturing sector, if we can actually go forward and enable manufacturing to go and process, all of the processing power, I think we can drive this to a real competitive advantage in that sector.
Just add one quick comment that in addition to the urban and municipality can do, but there's a role definitely for the cloud provider to do. Like, for example, in China, where I'm originally from, the traffic and the pollution is so bad that people are taking things like Alibaba, for example, the Ali Cloud in their home city of Hangzhou, they actually implemented a smart city to control the traffic. They actually demonstrate that it cut the congestion by 20, 30 minutes. That's significant. Where if you've ever been to China, the congestion is so bad. At midnight, you're sitting in the traffic, and then the pollution is unbelievable. So waiting for the government is one thing. Maybe it works here in the U.S. or in a developed country, but in some places, the cloud provider coming in, and at least maybe I'm biased because I'm come from data center side. We do see the cloud providers. The top cloud providers, Amazon here and like Alibaba, Baidu, and Tencent in China, they have a role to play because their infrastructure is omnipresent in the marketplace they have. They see things, they can sense, they get the sensor data, and they can add. A lot of things happen because you have this training concept, the AI, the machine learning, and deep learning. All of that stuff can be applied towards a smart city. So the role of government, I don't want to sound like a Trump, it should be limited. There should be a lot of the enterprise to come in both for business value proposition as well as just simply improve people's lives.
Okay, all right.
I think while 5G is focused more on the network infrastructure and optimizing the delivery times, I think one of the major gaps we see in a lot of the smart city initiatives is that each city is having their own plan. There is a lack of coordination at the national level or even the global level to say, once each city collects all this data from all of these sensors that they've deployed from the vehicles, what do they do with that data? And how do they aggregate that data at a national or global level so that they can learn from the common application or use of that data? And I think that's one of the major gaps that's not being addressed by 5G. It's not really being addressed anywhere. So if you talk to some of the cities, for example, even Charlotte, they're very advanced in terms of things that they're doing locally. But when you think about all of the data that they've collected, how are we aggregating that and using that at a national level? So I think that's one of the big challenges that's not being addressed.
Can I build on her point for one moment?
Sure, one moment though.
The U.S. Department of Transportation last year ran a Smart Cities Challenge
For 78 cities, right?
With 76 cities, and it was $40 million of public money and $10 million of private money. Qualcomm Ventures gave the $10 million, and all of the use cases and the proposals were actually put online. And one of the real value propositions of that effort was that there was a first national public forum where everybody got to see what everybody else is doing.
Right.
Okay, right. And lots of great ideas were generated that lots of cities took advantage of.
Right.
So I think, having the open, to your point, having the open communication between all of the cities, makes a lot of sense. I say this all the time now. It takes a smart village to make a smart city, okay? Copying somebody else's, words there. We do all have to share, but if we have public repositories for those things, I think we'll all build on that.
Right, and just to add to that, InterDigital, one of my company that I'm representing here today, they have an horizontal platform called Wadio that enables you to aggregate the data using open standards. So I think something like that needs to be planned at the national level. Having that open platform where all of the different cities can aggregate their data and then enable access via APIs to developers who then can create a free market by creating different applications that we can all access and leverage.
Makes sense, okay.
Yeah, with regard to the smart cities, I think you're exactly right. There are no standards, so to speak, and that's a good thing because the government, once they overlay standards, then it becomes uniform, which is good, but it's also bad because it stifles innovation, or could stifle innovation. So right now it's sort of in the infancy stage, which is a good thing, and all these techniques and censoring issues that have been put online, they're going to provide a lot of really good ideas for smart cities. So I think as long as the government can stay out of it and just encourage the development, at least for a while, it's a good thing.
Might be asking a bit much, though. Government likes to get involved in things, that's for sure. It's, good luck with that. But, I mean, we're almost out of time here. I kind of wanted to go down the security aspect of this as well, but I think timing-wise, I would just be cutting everybody off, so I don't want to do that to anybody. But I would suggest if, I think the panel members will be around for a little bit afterwards. Feel free to come up and corner them somewhere and ask them some questions, but if you want to also ask them about security, because I think that's a big part of this. And earlier when they were showing the panel, the presenter earlier was showing the smart city, the traffic congestion thing, that little map there, which was really cool to look at. For myself, just to show how kind of grumpy and old I am about this, I just thought, wouldn't a traffic circle do the same thing and be a lot less expensive, and that would work? But that's just my grumpy look at it. But again, like I was saying, I had to make sure I mentioned that. But I just want to make sure that, again, everybody, if you have a chance, make sure you talk to our panel members afterwards, get your questions asked. Sorry we didn't get a chance for Q&A here, but I think we had too good of a panel and too much, not enough time for it. But again, thanks. Please join me in thanking our panel for the information today. We appreciate it. Thank you, guys. And try to keep on time here. And so another panel. All right, we're good. Thank you.
All right, and we're going to keep this sort of forward-looking trend going with our next panel discussion, which is IoT, things to come. And we have an excellent moderator